Hey, class, welcome to what I think is week 5 of faith formation in the internet world. I hope you all had a great week last week. I want to thank you for all of your posts on Rectify and for taking the time to kind of dig into that show. And some of your responses I found to be quite insightful and made me rethink some things or think more deeply about that series. So I hope you continue to watch the series. I certainly want to sign the rest of the 3 seasons because I know you're so busy, but hopefully when you have time, you can binge watch those. I wanted to give another quick introduction to the materials this week. I think all in all, it makes for some fairly easy reading and not shouldn't be too time consuming. I want to leave you with enough time each week to work on your final project, and I'll say more about that in a separate email. I'll follow up with that later today. The first 3 items that you'll see under the October 30th section of the Moodle page called News, the Real and the Fake have to do with the work of Steven Pinker, who's a sociologist at Harvard, and I think I mentioned his work in class. His masterpiece really is a book called The Better Angels of Our Nature, and it's about the decline of violence in human history. And if we had time, I would assign the book, but it's like 830 pages, and who has the time to read that in the context of a semester? I highly recommend it, though. It's a very accessible book with tons of data that he organizes quite succinctly. Tons of graphs and charts and helpful items like that. So I've always thought it would be an interesting book for churches to walk through together. Anyway, I decided to post the review of that book from the New York Times. It's a rather detailed engagement with the book. I've also posted an article. The second item is an article that Stephen wrote, kind of updating his argument, so to speak, his findings and his research since the publication of the book. And then finally are a list of interviews that Stephen did with various outlets around the book. And basically most are combating the doubt, right, that this is true, that we do live in a less violent time than ever. And so feel free to read as many of those as you want. I didn't want to assign one. I thought there's a great options you can check based on outlets that you like, that you might be familiar with, but just take time and look at 2 or 3 of those. The next item, number 4, it looks like on the list, is the religious sources of fake news and alternative facts. This could potentially be a controversial article. I'd be interested to hear your reactions to that in the week 5 forum. But it's an attempt to understand why fake news lands better in certain religious communities than others. I found it to be an intriguing article and thought it would be interesting for you as well. The next item is a short blog post from Patheos contributor James McGrath, who's a professor at Butler, called Fake News is Old News in Religious Studies. Just a kind of a small reflection there for you. Do attempts to legislate against fake news recall the tactics of religious censors, the next item on the list. It does a good job of situating this concept of fake news in a broader history. We talked a lot about that there's really nothing new under the sun. It's just the technology has changed and the speed with which we can access this has changed. But it lays a little bit more of a historical groundwork. And then finally, the Christian fake news problem comes from the National Catholic Register. And I think it's interesting because we deal with and we ground our faith in events that many people think are fake, right? Specifically, the crucifixion, death, and resurrection of Jesus, right? A lot of people would take that as a fake news item. So this is just something to think about. How do we share our faith? How do we share the stories of our faith in a world that is highly suspicious of the miraculous and of transformation and renewal and all these things that we hold central to our faith? And finally, I put it last because if you have time to get to it, I'd like for you to check it out. If not, it's okay. It's an article from American Ethnologist called #Ferguson, Digital Protest, hashtag ethnography, and the racial politics of social media in the United States. This is it's a highly academic article, but it's also very, very brief. So I've found myself going back and rereading it a couple of times to kind of dig into the implications of what these scholars were writing about. But it does a good job of talking about the role of social media now in disseminating news, and how that is often, or how that reveals the way that we talk about race, the way that we talk about politics and justice, and the way in which people on the ground, so to speak, and a lot of times those are kind of formerly silenced or marginalized voices, now have avenues to share their experiences, their opinions, and their insight. So if you have a chance to take a look at that, I just think it's a really compelling take on the role of social media, and kind of more specifically, kind of hashtag ethnography, the way we hashtag things when news events are taking place. I think we're going to see a lot of that this week with things going on in DC starting today. So anyway, if you get a chance to look at that, that would be great. And as always, if you want to engage on the Moodle forum, the discussion forum, that would be much appreciated. And if you feel like taking that over to the Networked Faith blog, that would be great as well. So I hope you all have a great week. Again, thanks for your continued engagement with the class and the course materials and each other. So have a great week, and more soon. Thanks. Bye.